And welcome back to Jeff Koinange, live at the Intercontinental Hotel. Oh my, one my. When Tonny Gachoka shows up, you know he's going to throw a couple of shockers. That's exactly what he's doing on this Wednesday State of the Nation. We'll talk about issues affecting our country because, as I always keep saying, we need to always keep talking. Because the moment we stop talking is the moment we start fighting. And we don't want to go down that slippery slope. Tonny Gachoka unleashed. Tony with his Kanu shirt, all red.
Jeff, the red color was matching the t-shirt I brought for Mrs. Jeff Koinange.
Oh!
Because one is for Jeff Koinange, and because I'm gender sensitive, I'm folding the bring it on. Now this is for Madame. So when you go and have a wonderful Sunday brunch, she doesn't look out of place with bring it on. Now, I want to say that this color red, when I was in school learning a course in etiquette, we were taught that red, a deep red, is a strong color. That's why there's a red carpet. Why you wear red is to give the very clear impression of authority, of knowing what you're saying.
But that's not too much red, Tony.
No, well, I think it's just red enough to actually be brighter than your blue. Because when you go to Jeff Koinange and he wins awards, you know, these clips are for posterity. So you have to keep them for succeeding generations. The haters and the lovers can say, at that day, Tonny Gachoka was at JKL and so was Babagida.
Listen, Tony, real quick.
Yes.
Before we go to the question I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Folks on Twitter earlier on, because you know you started trending from like 2 p.m. You've been trending. And a lot of people were saying, we want to hear Tony quoting Shakespeare. Because you are Mr. Quote. I mean, other than PLO and Barack Maluka,
you
know your Shakespeare.
Yes.
And there's one particular quote that you just astounded us with last time.
Yes.
Which was, they what?
They loseth that do buyeth with much care. This is the story of the man who wanted to save money to have chicken every day of his life. When he had enough money to have chicken every day of his life, he had no teeth to eat the chicken. So they loseth that do buyeth with much care.
Deep.
And if you want to go deeper into some of Shakespeare's languages, for example, when he talked about the sky, he said, look at the floor of heaven. It is thick inlaid with stars above. And that was his poetic way of getting the person of the opposite gender to look at the floor of heaven, thick inlaid with stars above.
Wow.
And that would explain the sparkling stars in the floor of heaven. And Jeff, he also brought the wonderful tragedies of Brutus and Julius Caesar. And do you not see this replaying here in Kenya today?
It's replaying itself literally before our very eyes.
And for those who must go and Google the story of Brutus, the main characters are Mark Antony, Brutus, and Caesar himself.
Caesar, yes.
And Caesar was the king of Rome. And his wife in the dream said, Cleopatra, do not go to the capital, because if you go, you shall meet your death. And there were so many stabs on Caesar's chest.
Yes.
But the mightiest was from his brother Brutus. And when Caesar was refusing to die, he said this, the stab of Brutus, it was the mightiest of them all.
And the most painful.
And the most painful. And a fall did Caesar fall, the mightiest fall Caesar did fall. And I want to bring these tragedies in common contemporary political going-ons in this country. I would like to remind you, Jeff, when we were in school, we read Machiavelli. Again today I'm making you read
Machiavelli the Prince.
The first lesson of Machiavelli.
Yes. Quote, the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves.
Lesson 1. Lesson 2.
Niccolo Machiavelli.
Lesson 2 from Machiavelli.
Lesson number 2. It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear preserves you by a dread of punishment which never fails.
Machiavelli.
Deep, deep, deep.
My friend Uhuru Kenyatta should reflect on those 2 lessons of Machiavelli. It is better to be feared than to be loved. And the second one is a lion cannot protect itself from traps. And I want to say this. In every president's life, I remember Mwai Kibaki when he had to wrestle agro-leasing. And Jeff, Mwai Kibaki was thought to be a weak leader.
Yeah.
In one brush of the pen, he got rid of Matere Kireri, Alfred Gitonga. Munya said, "I'd rather die."
Yes.
And he went.
Finance Minister,
They were
Muiraria.
Exactly, Muiraria. And you remember that whole matter of agro-leasing changed the Kibaki regime to bring in the stability that came with Ambassador Mudaura. Jomo Kenyatta did this, as I said, with a little general election of 66. And Moi after the coup d'etat
Of 82.
of 82. For Uhuru, the crossroads have come. And these ones have come in a scat. There is a woman in this country called Anne Waiguru. A woman who, at the beginning of this government, I thought actually cared about fulfilling the obligations of Jubilee. But she has now become the biggest liability in the camp of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. A lady who, under the accusations she has, would actually step aside to allow impartial investigations into her department, continues to hang on to the goodwill and the trust that people have on the president, to the detriment of the presidency and the Jubilee government. I would like to say this to Anne Waiguru, if you are watching me. Do the honorable thing and step aside. You are hurting the fight on corruption.
But Tony, how is she hurting it? How is she hurting it?
Because other cabinet ministers were forced to stand aside.
But she said she stopped the stealing.
Jeff, I am not here to say anything less than I must. I will give my view to you because the evidence shows 700 million shillings was lost by NYS under her watch. Other ministers have gone for less. Kamau, Ngilu, Churchill, other people up to today have not been reinstated to the cabinet, and yet they have not been proved in a court of law to have committed any offense. What is this protection that Anne Waiguru wants Kenyans to think she enjoys from the president? In my view, coming from Kirinyaga as she does, she must know she has no votes to the pockets of Uhuru Kenyatta because that's our Uhuru Kenyatta zone. Therefore, there is not even a political argument other than refusing to do the right thing. Why Waiguru should not stand aside, and if she is innocent, as investigations can show, then she can come back to her job and the country.
But Tony, you must give it to Anne Waiguru. She's a very competent CS.
Competent in losing 700 million? Competent? Is that what you call competence?
But Tony, she said she stopped. She was a whistleblower.
So what did Ngilu do? What did Ngilu do? Did she herself take the money? What did Kambi Gazungu do? The issue is that they are saying you must take political responsibility if you are in charge of any position in government.
Why are you defending Ngilu so?
I am not defending.
I'm just asking.
She stood aside. No, I am happy she stood aside, as Kamau did. I would be happy if everybody whose name was brought in the bad light would stand aside until their name is cleared. I'm only saying the standards for Waiguru should be the same standards that every cabinet minister must and will be subjected to. And I must say this, when people see people like Tonny Gachoka on television, they say, oh, ni mtu ya Uhuru, huyu mtu analeta propaganda, nothing from the truth. Me, myself, I do not mind if you're Jubilee or you're caught. If you break the law, you face the music of the law.
You call it like you see it?
I call it as I see it.
Tony, do you think that impeachment vote will go through in Parliament? They said they have the numbers.
In my own view, the institution of Parliament really is not as clean as Caesar's wife. And the institution of Parliament has been politicized because there was a motion on Waiguru before sponsored by Rinturi. And then Rinturi said he was woken up by angels in the night and somehow he could not find his way to Parliament. And that motion lapsed. Now there is another motion. Therefore, the public do not expect Parliament to be investigators. They are not the anti-corruption agency. What Waiguru should do is follow what the Director of Public Prosecution has directed, record a statement. She should, in my view, step aside to allow impartial investigations. Jeff, you cannot have investigations at the NYS or in Devolution Ministry if one Waiguru remains in office.
Koinange is saying on Twitter, he's saying, Gachoka, tell us, is the axe falling on Waiguru now? Is it about to fall?
Well,
the guillotine, since you read the French Revolution?
Read my lips. Waiguru must stand aside. There is not any argument that's tenable that she can remain in office without an impartial investigation. The longer she stays there, she will poison the minds of Kenyans. When an investigation is done, people will not believe it was impartial. They will say she covered it up. So she's hurting herself, the president and the government, and should stand aside. And voluntarily so, not wait for the president to fire her. She should, on her own volition, show her loyalty to the head of state, her fidelity to the law, and subject herself without any fear to the full candor of a inquiry or investigation.
Yeah. Tim Tam says, I'm loving the show tonight. Gachoka got no chills. You've got no chills, man.
Jeff, you know, every time I look back at some of the moments we've had at the bench, I think about this country called Kenya. And sometimes I remember the journey it has taken through the pain and suffering of ordinary men.
Yeah, including jail time for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeff, we cannot allow these gains to disappear because we are taken into a prism of region or tribe or payback or games and counter games. Today as I was coming to the show, people were stopping me and saying, Tony, can you tell us what's happening? We are so confused. We don't know what's going on. And this one is saying this, who is fixing who? I said, nobody's fixing anybody. William Ruto is facing a case before the ICC. That case should or not be before the ICC is not an issue that should break our nation. What we should do, as the African Union has done, is to challenge any legal premise we have with the court, any political issue we have with the United Nations. Those are matters and avenues available, including the assembly of state parties. What we should not do is run around this country, Jeff, running on the blood of the people who died. And I'm sorry to say that when you voted PNU in 2007, a certain population was targeted. And then a certain criminal gang in that population retaliated. And therefore people died both sides of the divide, and those people died for what? Jeff, we cannot politicize those deaths. They are a fact and a matter of public record. What we can try and do is try and live within the confines of the law to find the best solution, as the president did. The president lived the talk. And you know, I've always been consistent with you the last 10 years on this matter of saying Uhuru must go to the Hague, and he must go there and prove his case there, not on the streets of Gatundu, not on the streets of Kiambu or Thika or Elgwen or wherever. He must prove it at the steps of justice at the Hague. And Jeff, I wanted to bring this issue, which is important about the teachers. Number one, it was so painful, Jeff, to see so many children who are now facing exams miss so many days.
5 weeks.
5 weeks of school. And I know, and I can tell you this, it really is a matter that hurt this country and the government and the president. And I'm sure it also hurt the opposition and the leaders, the able leaders of the opposition. And it must be a lesson that we must slowly debate this issue of the public wage bill vis-a-vis the abilities of the country to pay. I'm raising this issue because right now as we speak, Kenya is having a cash situation. There is no lack of money in the economy. What is happening is that there is 65% or more of the accounts in this country are held in private banks, instead of the consolidated account at the central bank holding the money. So if you are a devolved unit in Bungoma and you have held enough money to buy wheelbarrows or anything that the people need, that money, if not used, is in your account as a credit. And elsewhere, when you add it up, the money is not at the treasury. So it's a cash flow management problem that can be easily cured by bringing a committee to handle financial matters at the treasury, so that the money of government comes from one fund. But we are seeing a situation where there is not money available for everything that people want. And we must therefore have an honest discussion about public finances and expenditure. Too many commissions, too many salary increments, too many, and we are going to run this country down. So I wanted to bring that point, so that we don't politicize all the matters. Yes, teachers should be paid. Yes, teachers should have a better, remuneration. But let us do it in the public interest.
Okay,
and discuss.
You spoke about the treasury. You spoke about money, Tony.
Yes.
2 days ago, story headlines: Imperial Bank.
Oh Lord,
Imperial Bank. Terrible. I mean, goodness. What's going on, Tony?
Okay, the first thing, Jeff, your friend Obama was in town.
Yes.
Barack Obama was smiling a lot. But, U.S. presidents, when they smile, you should be worried. Because still waters run deep. So Obama and President Kenyatta signed an agreement, and I want all Kenyans to listen to me, that tracks every U.S. dollar transaction. So if you are dealing with U.S. dollars, and you bank in the dollar system, because all dollars are cleared in America, Whether you bank in Kenya, you're given $1 checkbook yote, the clearing house in Washington. So if you exceed certain numbers, which I don't want to say on TV,
correct,
then you are monitored. Hii pesa imetoka wapi? And people used to go to funny banks and put here and put there. Now that money is being tracked. And the owners of those monies are being followed. And you know, I won't repeat other banks.
No, don't.
But you know,
don't.
And you know why. Now, so I am just simply saying that is the first thing. The second thing they signed, and the guys in Kenya shillings, beware. Let me now tell you. Tonny Gachoka is telling you. If you bank $1 million shillings or more, you're being tracked by the Americans.
Correct.
Kenya accepted to sign an agreement where the US have authority to track any money more than $1 million shillings banked in any bank. And that money is not subject to Kenyan jurisdiction, to US jurisdiction.
So you say some of these banks were laundry houses?
I am saying, I don't want to say that on TV. I don't want to say on TV because when I say you leave me at Milimani, you take a motorbike and you leave me. You say that they have done. I'm just saying that when Obama came, the issue of corruption, fraud, and money laundering became an issue. You can say, Jay, yes. There's no problem.
No.
Yeah, you go. Why do you want me to say? Then you leave me in the court.
So are other banks in trouble, Tony? Are they monitoring?
That is the first thing. The other one, Jeff, which is important, is the interbank rate. You see what happens in the interbank market. Banks borrow overnight to be able to cover their books. But in Kenya, unlike in the international community, when you borrow against a treasury bill, the bank that lends you enhanced security of the treasury bill doesn't get it as an absolute security. What happens is that if that bank goes bankrupt, that treasury bill becomes part of the assets and depositors all demand, including the bank that lent you. But in the US and elsewhere, a bond or a bill, a treasury bond or bill is held by you absolutely until your money comes back. So it's not part of the book of the bank. And that is an amendment that can be done in the management system of the interbank lending. The other issue obviously has been regulation has been a problem in Kenya. And many will argue that previous governors have not been as tough as this current governor. And this governor is probably, in his first 100 days, putting his stamp and saying that banks must be regulated properly. So you have Dubai Bank and you have Imperial Bank having seen or caught the eye of the governor and are now in receivership. The question will be, are there other banks?
Right.
And this then sets panic in the public.
Absolutely.
And
people will be withdrawing their money, Tony.
They get into panic. And, but I would say this, it is good to panic than to regret. So if you think you're in a fishy bank, you better become a member.
You did not go there, man.
What did I say?
You didn't go there.
No, I'm a member of Nairobi Club. I'm a member here at the Intercontinental. I have not said it. I'm very careful.
That's a good endorsement. Subtle, but good.
And one other thing with these banks, as Jeff, that you should know as well, is that interest rates have been climbing.
I know.
At a very high rate.
Ridiculous.
And, the incomes are not, matching. What the banks have to pay to attract money. And when you're hitting 21% on treasury bills, then the country is reaching a point where capital is.
But real quick, before we go to break, Tony, some people who had like 2, 3, 4, 10 billion shillings in some of these banks.
Jeff, some of those people are genuinely hurt. Some of those people are hiding their money in those banks. So there are two categories of people: the harmed and the people who are suffering because their money has been lost. But there are those who are hiding it there. So what is interesting now, we will soon know who was hiding the money. You know there are some banks that go under and people's lives continue.
Correct.
And they don't even need the deposit back. I don't know, but it happens.
It's called easy come, easy go.
And unlike an award like this that you have to earn and work, and people have to vote.
Correct.
When you have easy money, you just put it in, and when you put it in, Kenyans say you're very good. You should be an MP because you drive a Land Rover, and you have a house in Lavington, and you have gold on your hands, and you got 2, 3 wives.
Leave my friend Sonko alone.
No, I did not. You're very good at mentioning people. But the Gida really made an impression on you. This Gida man.
Ukifika nyumbani, salimia mama Gida na Gida mwenyewe.
Haya, na mimi nikifika mtaa, tamsalimia Sonko.
Tony, you're forcing me, man. You're forcing me, Tony. I gotta do this, man.
Absolutely. One more for Gida. One more for Gida.
My cameraman is about to pass out. We're gonna keep tweeting. I'm going to read your tweets when they come back. At Tonny Gachoka, at Koinange Jeff, the hashtag bring it on. You didn't say what it's about, though.
Well,
tell me
I'll say after the break.
After the break. We'll take a break, come back, plenty more. JKL rolls on. We'll be back
with the award-winning journalist, Jeff Koinange.
in a moment.
My, oh my.